Hey, that last video I did just recently, it was a little clickbaity. It was the Mac versus PC thing. And so I wanted to follow up pretty quickly with something with a little more substance for every user, regardless of what platform you're on. And I want to say it's a little less divisive, but I do hear a lot of things that just simply aren't true about it. And that is USB microphones. Lots of people will tell you USB microphones suck. You have to use an XLR mic, so they say. I'm going to tell you why that's not necessarily true. But before I tell you that, I'm going to tell you an XLR mic, that's not a thing. That's not a term. The term is microphone. It is a standard connection analog microphone that uses XLR. XLR mic is a term that was made up by podcasters sometime after USB mics appeared to differentiate the two, but it's not a term that you hear at all in the professional world because microphones are pretty much inherently XLR wired. They're not wired to USB. That's its own thing. That's the specialty thing. That's why we call it a USB mic versus a standard mic. One is standard, the other is non-standard. With that out of the way, so let's not use that term. With that out of the way, let's get into how they sound and why they have the stigma that they have. So I've got several different things sitting here. I've got your standard connection, audio interface, condenser microphone, standard XLR pinout wiring. This is kind of a normal pro audio setup. It's not that different than what's been around for the last couple decades. And it's what people say you need to be professional. But then there's another option, and it still includes your standard microphone. That's these inline devices. They have a USB out, and you just plug the mic into them or plug a mic cable into them. And that's that, and they just work. Your third option is the USB microphone. This is the only one I have around here to use as a prop. This is the Apogee Mic 96K. It's unimportant which one it is. The fact is, it's a USB microphone. So, what is the difference between these different pieces? Not that much. So, when you use a standard connection, you have your microphone with the XLR output, which goes into the preamp in the audio interface and is converted to zeros and ones binary code and sent down via USB. That all happens in this box, and it's got a few other features like a headphone amp and stuff. How is that different than this? It's really not. This doesn't have the headphone amp built in. It doesn't have some of the extra features. It doesn't have the extra mic preamp or extra audio output. But as far as the conversion, you got a mic preamp here. It goes through a conversion chip, is changed to binary code and sent out via USB. The question is, how is that different than one of these? Still not. You've got your mic, it goes through the circuitry, it goes through a converter, becomes digital, and is sent out via ones and zeros via USB. The same process happens in each one, and the chip involved in doing that, it's a little tiny thing. It can be built into pretty much any mic housing. It doesn't take much to do that. Here's the problem with USB mics. They are limited. You can, unless you get really clever with aggregation and stuff, you can only run one at a time. So if you want to connect up two mics, that becomes problematic. You can't choose your preamp if you have a certain tone that you're after, or you want to do processing on the way into the box. Those aren't options with a USB microphone. So they are limited in that regard, but in terms of sound quality, they are every bit as capable as an audio interface. You can put the same chip that's in here into here and end up with virtually the same results. So why don't more people do it? Well, it comes down to that flexibility that I mentioned. Like I mentioned, I don't have any other USB mics except this one. This is my little pocket warrior in case I need something and can't carry around a backpack with a mobile rig. I have something that I can plug into my phone or plug into any USB recorder of any kind, computer or whatever, and get something laid down. So I'm never totally without. That's its purpose for me. Everything else I have in here, I have audio interfaces connected up. Right now I'm running into my normal audio interface. I've got a mic set up here. I've got a 416 set up here that I'm talking into. And that is the reason that I don't use USB mics, because I have standard audio connections. I have processing that I like to run. That's the long and short of what I need. And USB just doesn't really have a place, but that doesn't mean that it's not capable of sounding good. And that's the argument that we run into. So the people who say USB mics can't sound good, they can't be good, that's not right. That's a lie. Now, a lot of them aren't good. And the reason for that comes down to price point, because you are now cramming the cost of a standard microphone and an interface into just a microphone. And to do that, often corners are cut. The reason they cut corners has nothing to do with because they have to, it's to meet a price point. Your average USB mic user doesn't have a ton of interest in spending $2,000 on a microphone. That's not their thing. I'm not saying those people don't exist. They probably do. But most people who are up for spending a large amount of money on a microphone, they want to invest in the entire professional platform. They're prepared to go through all that stuff, and they may want some of the extra features you're going to get from XLR. Whereas USB mic users, they tend to be on the lower end of the price spectrum. They don't want to spend a lot of money. They want simplicity. Simplicity is more important than absolute quality. And so that's the audience for those. That's not going to change anytime soon. So there is a progression. USB mics are getting incrementally better as technology gets better and it gets cheaper and it gets smaller. They're improving on a day-to-day basis, but there's not a big push for super high-end USB microphones. There will always be a push for super high-end standard microphones because it's standard. You're going to have everybody from major record producers to people at home who want the same thing using those mics, whereas you're not going to see USB mics in play at a major recording studio. They don't have the flexibility. They don't offer that studio the flexibility necessary to do the recording well. So when somebody tells you you have to have an XLR mic, you can shake your head and move on. You don't. And then USB mics are crap. They're not. There's some good ones out there, and they're getting better all the time. So now you know. And hopefully at some point I will stop hearing how bad USB mics are and start hearing about how good mics can sound, regardless of what interface they use, if you put that mic in a great space and perform well into it.